There's an element to like things being human now as well. Like people want to know that a human wrote this and they just didn't chuck it in GPT and they didn't put any thought into it. So I think like that's also an element that people now underestimate.
One was from first line of code to first dollars in the bank was 30 days. And so just as a little dot point in his email, demonstrating traction, demonstrating capability, building trust, building respect. It was like, yeah, this is solid.
Like it just goes back to signal and noise. And like if you're only producing noise, you're never going to get a cut through now. But if you're actually adding value, if you're calling and it goes straight to the message bank and it say, hey, Don, I'm just calling to try and help you out for the tender, which I assume you're currently writing right now. Give me a call back. Like there's so much value. It cuts straight through. Why wouldn't you call back? So if the world's fucked, are there at least going to be some good investment opportunities?
That's the good news, Jack. Being VCs, we're immune from all of this.
It's not going to affect us at all.
Morning, how are we?
Good. How are you guys?
Freaking awesome.
What time is it?
7:30 in the morning.
30.
Not too bad. Ash and I were on the phone when we saw your first email come through, Donna, and we assumed it was 4:30, and it was.
Mate, you can take me out of Australia, but you can't take the body clock. 4 a.m. wake up start, and
it is,
and a good way to start the day too. Non-serious and slightly aggressive.
It is bizarre how the body clock adjusts. So even getting to bed at midnight over here in a different time zone, still body clock 5 a.m. bang. It's pretty impressive what our bodies do.
I think that's called age, Aaron. It's age.
Well, I think it's called being a founder and just anxiety attacks.
Yeah, that's true. We've been having some good convos, but no, I really enjoyed this trip as it's gone on. I'm not saying that I disliked it at the beginning, but it's gotten better and better. We had an awesome presentation on quantum yesterday by somebody really deep in the quantum world and got a real broad understanding of what's happening, how it all works, what's the upsides, the downsides, and that sent my little brain into many different vectors, which led to many random conversations over dinner. And I have a feeling that some of the participants might not come back this morning.
Yeah, Mark Webber, no, not the Formula One driver, but his talk was fantastic. And I think it caused everyone to really think deeply. And then, it was represented in the conversations last night in the Airstream caravan in Blue's Kitchen in Shoreditch. We went pretty deep, got a bit dark.
But like when you say deep and dark, is it like what quantum computing will be able to enable? Like
more the AI rather than quantum. And I think that for me, that was one of the key takeaways, actually. I always thought quantum would compound AI, which it likely will, but the conversation was quantum won't replace classical compute. And most of AI is, in current thinking, more applicable to classical compute. But it will have relevance to really complex systems, complex problems. But if you bring these things together with robotics as the third interlay and you start thinking about the future of humanity, that's where the conversation started going.
Yeah, there was a point where I was going, so just tell me what everyone on Earth's going to be doing. And one of the participants who comes more from hardware, it's like, this is making me very uncomfortable. I think I want to leave. It's like...
Was it inside the bus, inside Blue's Kitchen? Like, was it in that area?
Yeah, it's in the... So you're inside that vibe, you're tripping out a little bit. You know what it's like, Jack.
So if the world's fucked, are there at least going to be some good investment opportunities?
That's the good news, Jack. Being VCs, we're immune from all of this.
It's not going to affect us at all.
Yeah. No, look, there is, and that's why I enjoy these trips. And like, why get someone in to talk to us about quantum computing? You need to be able to have understanding of what's coming over the horizon, especially if our task is to try and pick these things. And I might just play this. There was an interview with who's the Conehead?
Mark
Andreessen. Mark Andreessen.
That's pretty accurate.
As soon as he said Conehead, I knew it was that's who he's referred to.
Oh, I don't have it in the list. So he was just talking through his investment thesis, and his view is that when you take quantum and you take AI and what they're having a look at, there are going to be some great opportunities. He was just putting forward how incumbents are in trouble. And incumbents have always faced a bit of a challenge But when you've got quantum versus AI, their thesis is that incumbents are just totally fucked. And I think that's right, because somewhere later in the agenda, I actually had another video. No, I don't. So this is exactly how you'd expect it to go.
About it. Yeah, you dreamt about adding these things.
Oh,
He did. No, it was in there. The video was there because I saw it.
well, on this particular one, I was pointing out a lot of the hype around AI is absolutely correct. But if people think that large companies are just going to go and adopt your little AI tool and revolutionize them, you've got another thing coming. These are companies that won't even let you connect your personal device to their network. They won't let you check your email at work. And he was just putting forward that it's going to take longer than people expect for these larger companies to adopt. And I think both are true. Those larger companies are going to take a lot longer to adopt, which is sowing the seeds for them to actually be totally disrupted a lot faster than any other time in human history. And so coming back to your question, Jack, when you understand that, and I look at our portfolio and then I look at some of the investments we're looking at, that's given me more confidence of saying, okay, I can see how these things fit in. We've got to make sure that these teams are able to have organizational cultures that can adopt all of this stuff really quickly, but we're directionally correct.
The line from the Mark Andreessen video was, all incumbents are going to get nuked. Everything gets rebuilt. And I think for me, that just shows the size of the opportunity. The challenge, of course, is identifying where the value is going to accrue and lie and what the opportunities are. But I think and I love the other part of that video, Don, where Mark Andreessen was saying that thinking of AI as a new form of, it's not like cloud or a layer. This is basically reinventing computers. And when you think of it as actual computational power and brain of itself, it's going to rebuild everything.
Yeah. But by the end of yesterday, after those sessions and all that thinking, my energy and brain was at peak Don. And at one of the events, they had an unmanned protein ball station, and I just loaded up for the whole week. And so that didn't help either.
It was about 2 months supply that you took.
And I've been offering it to all of our
Tupperware?
Pardon?
What did you eat? Did you have to bring your own Tupperware, or was this
they
more of
were
a
five protein balls to a bag? Yeah, so
with ingredient labels?
Yeah, well, with the whole box and die. These are proper ones, Ash.
Yeah.
It's legit catering at events.
Yeah, I see some of the events that Don goes to. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it made me laugh. So Ash, your head went to like Tupperware. My head went to like Don lined his pockets and jumper, like everything with all these protein balls.
That's pretty much spot on, Jack.
Yeah. I was thinking no wrapper. Like I was thinking just straight, bang.
That's what I was thinking. And I was like, surely you didn't carry a Tupperware to London. Like, come on.
It was in
the generation that lived through the war, and then, they're very penny wise. Don, as a founder, has lived this traumatic experience where he just hoards food at any opportunity.
No, well, two things here. One, I think I messaged the group chat. I got locked out of the end of the Jensen Wang talk because I went out to make a call and then they wouldn't let me back in. So I'm like alone, mostly going through, and then I seize an opportunity. So first, and then I was explaining to a founder last night, because I also had managed to find that the cleaning trolley was unattended, and I loaded up on all the tea and milk that I could get into my pockets, because they only give you 2 tea bags and that's not enough. And she's like looking at me going, aren't you like pretty well off? And I'm like, yeah, but that's not the point. Especially in founder world, you have so much disappointment. You have so many losses. You've got to have little wins. And for me, getting the protein balls, getting the free tea, these are the little wins that you've got to seize in life.
Yeah,
Stop looking at me like that.
Tim doesn't bring me a present home. He brings me all of the free tea from every hotel room, and then as much of the expensive tea from the lounges that he can physically put in a bag.
He gets
like,
yeah.
So
every time we used to go to the airport, Dad would go into the Qantas lounge, and Dad would always tell me, Jack, before you go, you've got to go fill your pockets with the tea bags. But it wasn't even that Dad liked the expensive stuff. He just thought he had to get his money back.
Oh, that's so true.
See, I'm not crazy. I'm just ahead of the curve. What else, Aaron, from this this trip, outside of me embarrassing us in front of our friends?
I think just AI permeating every conversation everywhere. And one little insight was the Aussie founders talking about the difference of corporates and enterprise in Australia, which seem quite risk adverse or adverse to AI in general, whereas over here, the UK enterprise, it's like you have to have AI as part of your product or we're not interested. So that was quite interesting observation. And then the other good session of the week for me was, or real highlight was Grace Miller, who is the head of failure and experimentation in Stephen Bartlett's team, so Diary of a CEO podcaster and his investment fund. And that was fantastic. And it turns out we have a lot of mutual friends, and she's a ex-Gold Coaster. But yeah, just her talking about, systematic and programmatic ways to embed a culture where you are constantly experimenting, and their entire team have challenges to create AI agents and bots to improve their workflow, but it's kind of like go and experiment. And then they have some rigor, like that. It's not just a free-for-all. They actually have methods and data-based approach to measuring success. But that was a great session as well.
Good find. Thank you, Ash. I think those are the little details that the participants, when talking with them, it's like we thought we were going to come and just do a few boring things about learning the UK market and meet some customers and some investors. But between things like quantum and Diary of a CEO and AI and a number of the sessions, like one of the things I like about these missions is that even if you don't end up expanding to the UK or the US in, say, the next 12 months or 2 years, these founders go back with such a bigger ball of energy, such a bigger perspective, such a bigger vision. Everyone just sits there saying, my business is fundamentally going to change. I see this opportunity. I haven't been pushing hard enough here. I've been scared over here, but now I realize I don't need to. That's where I get a huge amount of energy from.
Completely. And for founders sitting back home or investors, that it is so hard to justify the time and expense of going on these trips, but it completely changes your strategy for your entire business. Like you have to leave the bubble of Australia, look over the event horizon and understand what's coming. And every single founder on this trip is talking about how much their domestic business is going to change completely.
Aaron, if you could go onto the Entrepreneur page and just update, though, all the tea and the protein balls that you want. Like that's...
Oh, I'm sure. It'll attract some interesting founders, Don.
Yeah, well, I think robotics as well. Last year in London Tech Week, they had this funny little dog that did a backflip into a car and damaged the car. And like that was the extent of it. This year we had some robotics that it is getting very good. Like some of the eye movement and eye twitching and the way the lips moved on a couple of these robots and their hand movement was unbelievable. I didn't think that I'd go to London Tech Week and see a sex doll that had full VR, and that was a little out there.
I was expecting that as a highlight, Don.
Pardon?
That's where I thought you were going to say that was the highlight, but
No. But what I found interesting though with that particular company and the founders is that they haven't just gone and made that robot. They've created an entire ecosystem that includes the sale of products. They've integrated blockchain. They've got a TikTok social media aspect. They've got VR. Whilst the underlying product is undoubtedly a bit weird, it's such a bigger vision for it. And every one of the companies that were presenting in Startup Alley, just the vision and the size of it was a lot bigger than I think previous years. But what did scare me a little bit is that it is very clear that the cost to produce any form of product is getting cheaper and cheaper. And in every vertical, the number of competitors is just exploding. And in a conversation I had with one of our portfolio who's considering a cap raise and a few other bits and pieces, they've got a very sticky product and they're doing really well. But my fear for them is that they're about to have more and more Me Too's. And even though their product is superior and there's a whole lot of aspects to it that have taken years to develop, so he's got some durability there, it still dilutes the sales conversation when a customer now can have 5, 6, 7 conversations with potential people, even though those other companies can't do what they do. and they don't have the robustness of security and all of those aspects, it still slows down the sales cycle at very least and puts pricing pressure that they didn't have before. And so that's why it's important to good products aren't good enough. It's great go-to-market strategies. It's great lock-in strategies. It's all of those ingredients that we're just going to see become even more valuable, even though we know they're valuable today. Jack, Ash?
No, I got nothing there. I think that's good, Don.
Well, it sort of dovetails a little bit, given London Tech Week. Y Combinator listed its wish list of companies, and it's all AI. As you would imagine, it's AI full stack. It's AI vertical things. They're all built on the premise of going vertical. And I'm reminded a bit, I can't remember how I found it, but I sent to you guys Sophie AI. I've seen a lot of ads, and they advertise for a digital receptionist. But when you actually have a look at what Sophie AI is building, the receptionist is like the easy sell bit to get people in through the front door, but actually the receptionist that integrates into a CRM, and it also has a job management system, and they're bringing out invoicing. And so if you're a small professional or a small trade or a small business, this is like a business in the box, but the starting point is actually the receptionist, and then they're seeking to control everything else from there. And that's what I'm seeing with a lot of these YC companies. The AI assistant or the AI feature is like the beachhead to win the customer, to then displace them, to get them off Salesforce, off HubSpot, off the job management system. Like I can see them getting off Xero soon.
I agree with you. I think there are some minute details that for Australian companies will be slightly different. Like Xero is a really good example where I am actively looking for an alternative because I don't think it's that good. But there are very limited systems that handle the Australian market well, which is why 90% of Australian businesses use Xero. So I think like the full stack the market penetration for Australian specific requirements maybe further down the line. So I think you'll see obviously US and Europe penetration first. So I think the Australian market, if you have small tools that you can go and disrupt aspects that aren't a full stack, there is still merit to that.
It just piggybacking off that, Ash, that's been a real topic of convo this week with the founders on the trip about localization required in different markets. And I think it's massively underestimated how much localization is needed for each new market and how much you lose with focus. On this list from YC, the one that I'm really excited about, that category, the future of education, I think that is absolutely ripe for complete reinvention of the system. And we've talked about that previously. The other one on here that I've been actively looking for AI tools for my email, like absolutely disappointed in Gemini that sits over Gmail. Like it is just worse than basic search. But I'm surprised that no one has really cracked that yet. But to your point, Don, I can see something that ultimately captures all your channel of communications and just becomes that central agent. It's going to be interesting who wins that. And presumably there'll be multiple winners in that space, just like there's multiple equivalents of Google. But yeah, the other thing I want to say about the YC list, there's not a lot on there that's surprising. I can't think of anything there where it's like, oh, wow, that's really unexpected. I think everything there is pretty intuitive.
Yeah, I think like my default was I expected there would have already been people solving this or have solved it and at least being really well capitalized. And it's cool for us from Australia investors to then get an insight to what are these guys doing in North America who are at the bleeding edge of the best deal flow in the world.
Yeah, it's kind of reassuring, isn't it? Like I think we are absolutely across all of these categories and would have written this list ourselves. There's nothing there that is really an outlier that I can see that would be something that hasn't been considered.
We lost Don, have we? Yeah, I think yours is breaking up a fair bit as well, Aaron.
Yeah, okay. Shitty hotel internet.
I do wonder, like, does the interface going forward, does it just look like a GPT interface, like a WeChat where everything's integrated into the one thing and you just use the one interface?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where Whisper is going, right? Like there's a reason it's one of the fastest growing AI tools on the market. And there's a reason why Altman's kind of gone out with his new business. And there's hypotheses around that won't have any type of camera or anything. It'll just sit there and be your kind of voice capture. I think I think everything's going to be integrated. I think some of Apple's latest releases also are kind of dropping those kind of breadcrumbs of leaning people to a comfort level. I think they're being quite strategic, like OpenAI was slowing down GPT in terms of like how fast it was pushing out answers. I think they're breadcrumbing that, they probably have had this tech ready for a couple of years. And then that's my thesis.
No, I think it's a really good point, Ash. I think if you look at the history of custom apps becoming embedded in Apple iOS, and Apple essentially, the phone becoming essentially an extension of self-wearable, won't they just naturally own it? I just see it heading in that direction. Whoever owns the attention of the eyeballs will ultimately own the space. And if they've already got that distribution, unless someone comes in to displace them, I just see it heading that way. It's interesting, one of the delegates in the mission cohort, he and his co-founder will often just have voice GPT running during their conversations and interact with it. And he said, it's fantastic. It's like having a third co-founder, but their rate limiter is just they hit the thresholds. So you can already, these stories of founders already hitting the subscription limits and just that demand for more and more and more. And when it starts getting embedded in just everyday conversations amongst people, it becomes your second brain. Like we're already there.
Yeah.
We're already at that point of deeply integrated.
Has on message.
I have notifications turned off.
Don't think so. Have you had a play around or had much of a look at the HubSpot integration, Ash, into GPT?
I hate HubSpot.
Hate it? I was reading a blog post from one of the HubSpot co-founders, and it's pretty wild. Like where
I read it, and I was like, cool, no point. Notion, it will do it all.
Yeah, I mean, not HubSpot itself. I just mean like how overlaying AI and then using just an interface, how much more useful that is than a CRM that has all these fucking features.
Well, yeah, but that's why everyone hates CRMs.
Yeah, but yeah, this is where we're heading. Like it's going to be so much more useful.
I have so many very opinionated thoughts on this topic, Jack. This is an entire...
Hell, Ash.
This is I need a glass of wine conversation.
I'm back.
But when you two are back quick, I do want to give you an update on some of the products that we've got an MVP for one already for Simplify as well. So I want to because Aaron, you used the word second brain. And I was like, oh, that's in my marketing. That's weird. So I will schedule.
You should work on the first one before he tries to do the second one.
Go straight to the second.
Coming from you, Dot, that is a big shout.
No, he knows me well. Gonna go straight to the second.
I did just have a call with Chris about, it's like, oh, so it's all of this built so Don is not a bottleneck. And I was like, yeah.
So none of us are a bottleneck. I reckon I'm the biggest bottleneck in this business.
Yeah, but I can call you and text you and you eventually get there. I feel like Don, I just book a meeting and it's the only way. But I figured it out, Don.
Well, I don't know what you talked about once I dropped off, but I assume it was good.
We finished wrapping up the YC combo.
Okay. Well, oh no. I just clicked on another one of my Insta videos, but it's gone. But Stanley Druckenmiller, who's just one of the greatest investors that I absolutely respect. I had just a little video there because one of the things we've got to do in our role, and as any investors and even founders as well, right, is you've got to spot trends. And he was just talking about how they got onto NVIDIA years ago by tracking. What they do is they track what Stanford grads are going into to try and get early into the new fields. And there was just all of these grads changing out of blockchain and crypto mid-semesters. And so he convened a meeting with a number of people to ask them what the go is. And they started to explain to him what it all was. And somebody mentioned this company called NVIDIA. And he's like, yeah, but they just do graphic chips. And they just explained to him the whole thesis of why NVIDIA. And he just loaded up 1,000% ago. That's the kind of creative thinking, right? And that's people at the top of the game. That's the kind of stuff they do.
That's what I was saying a few months ago, how I was mentioning how you just track what the Harvard MBA grads go and do. And you're like, okay, well, that'll take a couple of years to get to Australia. Let's go and implement that. And people make a lot of money off doing that. And none of them are going into tech or PE. They're going into buying boomer businesses that have no AI, that have no automation, racking them up and paying them a super to leave their business intact. It's very clever. And if I had the cash liquidity.
Well, that's effectively without giving away too much. That's what we were talking to Vu Tran. He's like, let's get the yellow pages and buy all these old couples.
Yeah, exactly. I think I will own laundromat.
I hope Vu isn't upset that we've given away his whole thesis and all our listeners start doing.
I was about to say.
So many listeners.
I did like at the dinner the other night when a couple of the group called us international podcasters. Didn't introduce us as VCs, but that was just because they're over here and listen to the podcast.
That was the absolute legend that is
Ed and Warren.
And guess what the bugger says? Guess what he says? Where's Jack?
That Jack and Ashaw's. Oh,
Where's Jack?
I'm gonna have to start stepping up.
No, everyone's asked that though this week. Like Warren from TLQ. Oh, where's Jack? Oh, thanks. Where's Jack? Where's Maren? Where's Jack? Where's Maren? Hi, Don and I are here.
Aaron, completely off topic, but my brain has gone there. Any like specific thing from this mission that you're like, I want to replicate in the US?
Quantum.
Oh, as in the mission. Yeah, quantum. I think always that mix of AI and quantum, like bleeding edge tech.
I think we spent more time on go-to-market this time versus others. So we actually had a full session where we stripped down the go-to-market, even the investors that are on the trip, because, you know, whether you have a fund or a syndicator, and we really went deep into the canvas and just exposed a lot of points that probably they're a little bit weak on, and really gave them some insights, and then being able to do it with us assisting, but then also having their peers giving them ideas on awareness and lead generation, sales conversion, or what's worked and what hasn't, where you had this whole room working together. A number of them are taking the advice of go and do some marketing with some ads and some SEO with a landing page that has a waitlist function for your product. See if anybody, for your new product or your new feature, whatever else, see if anybody actually wants to sign up to a waitlist. Because if the answer is no, then it may still be a good product, but you must have a marketing issue somewhere. You must have a lead generation issue. You must have a communication issue. Solve that first and concentrate on getting that working. Because if you can't get people interested, you're going to be in trouble. So I think more of that we've probably taken for granted on the other trips, because and doing that early on like Tuesday has then meant that it's facilitated a lot of combos. Because when you're on the train or the bus or whatever, you can then continue the conversation. So I think we're going to change that up a bit.
I agree with that. I think it's confirmation that the third-party events like London Tech Week and London and Partners and the UK government, they are just lackluster for participants because they're content delivery. You could YouTube it. And so doubling down next year on the UK, we're just doing entirely our own agenda and not going to anyone else's stuff.
Go to an event to listen to an accountant tell me how to open a bank account in the UK was only the fact that they had listen to this. Have you ever seen a pork donut? It was pork in a little donut with some applesauce on the top. Insane.
It was so good. So that was a networking event where the sponsor who sponsored all the drinks for everyone managed to become rather disliked with his keynote telling us all how to set up company structures and bank accounts and accounting and anyway. But to answer your question, Ash, I think it is weird to bring people all the way over this side of the world for Don and I to then deliver workshops while we're here. But you have to have the contextual. First of all, you have to get your head out of the day-to-day business. So you have to extract. But you have to have the context of seeing a bigger market, hearing from the Aussie founders who've had that experience, hearing from their fuck-ups, mistakes, everything, understanding what exponential looks like. And when your head has got all of that piece, then you can be led into these conversations around go-to-market and that dawning moment of, I'm getting this wrong in our core business. We've got to go back to strategy. So doubling down on all of that.
When we had the investor panel, and then two of the founders, that in the middle of the panel, a couple of investors went, "I'm writing you a check."
Yeah.
Awesome. And that's
so bloody good.
Part of the.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
It has been good. One of the founders went off last night and got a capital commitment from an investor, and another one's landed actually two others have landed sales contracts. So they're out hustling.
Love it.
I'm trying to keep this theme relevant to everything that we've discussed on this trip. And if we accept that this AI world is just going to continue to march forward, which I think it will, and there's going to be a lot of disruption, it means that your go-to-market and your durability is going to be what is key. Now, it's becoming noisier and harder to find leads. And I saw this post by Ashley Mann that we then discussed with a couple of participants here. It says, your CEO just approved another 100K for Google ads. Meanwhile, your biggest competitor CEO was quoted in 3 industry articles this month. Guess which company AI assistants are recommending? We're living through the biggest shift in business discovery since Google's launch. What's happening when potential customers ask ChatGPT or Claude about solutions in your space? These AI models aren't parsing your ad copy and landing pages. They're referencing authoritative sources, trade publications, industry reports, expert commentary. Think about the last time you saw a CEO quoted as an industry expert. I'll put this link in here. Now, this has always been pretty well the case, but because AI is such a black box and doesn't give you a lot of the information that it's using, I think this is the case that we are fundamentally going to have a huge shift in the world moving to AI, and the things of SEO and all of those kind of aspects. If you're still playing the old game and you're not finding ways to get, into places where AI is going to likely find you, you're going to get left behind. Ash?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Don. It sort of echoes some of the comments from Vu about, especially like go-to-market, the old tricks from the past 10 years that a lot of SaaS companies have relied on to scaling from 0 to 100 just won't work anymore in the world of AI. The takeaway for founders is like you just have to be adaptable and you have to be open-minded. And it's the same situation like pre-SEO when Google came in. It's the same scenario here. Like there's a new way, a new channel, and you just have to be open-minded and try it and not just rely on the tricks that have worked previously.
I think we kind of distill what we talk about in every episode. It's like the core competency a founder needs remains consistent, like the ability to experiment, adapt to change, make decisions from points of data. But that ability to navigate change, and now we just have a faster rate of change on the tech side.
And that's coupled now with Apple releasing the new iOS that's going to have the inbuilt call screener, which I am very excited for. There was this little video from Simon Beard.
Apple has just quietly destroyed cold calling with this one update. So a call can be met with this, hi, this is call screening. Please tell us why you're calling. AI will pick up the call before you have to answer it. Then you get to decide if you want to take the call or not. Think how hard it's going to be for cold callers to get through now. You've got your own personal receptionist gatekeeper through AI. This is going to be really interesting how it plays out in the sale. Drop your comment below on the prediction.
And before we discuss it, there was another post that if this Apple call screener means that your outbound cold calling is not going to work, then you probably had a bigger problem to begin with. It says that this is from Jamie Partridge. He says, I own an SDR agency and here's my take on Apple killing cold calling. If you can't pass this simple screening, you're destined to fail anyway. Don't blame iOS. Prospects receive a ridiculous amount of poor outreach and they're tired of it. This feature is absolutely needed for the industry in general to filter out the slop of outreach. I actually believe even more safeguards are needed. This feature will make it even more difficult for poor outreach to get through and will allow the elite callers to shine. The value of a good SDR is about to go up even more. And I think that's right.
Totally think that's right. Good hearing Addie talk about their policy inside even her own business, right? Like they will never send a generic email out. Every email has to be customized to the point that if anyone else read it, it would almost be embarrassing. And I just love that as a little framework, and that's just going to become more and more relevant, right? The human relationship, reciprocity will matter more and more.
And message that resonates.
I think that's a great reminder, Aaron, considering we're about to go live with a new investment.
I've got her voice in my head.
But the way, like after I listened to Simon's video, like it just goes back to signal and noise. And like if you're only producing noise, like you're never going to get a cut through now. But if you're actually adding value, and it could be like, if we just think about this in terms of Tender Pilot, for example, you're calling and it goes straight to the message bank and it say, Hey, Don, I'm just calling to try and help you out for the tender, which I assume you're currently writing right now. Give me a call back. Like there's so much value. It cuts straight through. Why wouldn't you call back?
Yeah, exactly. And that, again, that's go to market. If you understand the customer, you somehow have gotten a database that knows that they're tendering for it and you can solve their issue, you're going to get a much higher cut through versus, hi, sorry to disturb you. I'd like to talk to you about your tender process needs.
I would almost return your call, Don, just to hear that voice more.
Can we trial that? Like split it. We'll do Don doing a normal outbound call to an investor versus that voice. What has more cut through?
Well, speaking of cut through in this context, we were chatting on the podcast once about wanting an AI agent to answer my calls with the frustration of real estate agents. And then Don and I did some searching and Don found an ad for this company, Huru AI, which does exactly that. And I signed up for it. And then very shortly after, I got an email from the founder, Simon Thompson. Turns out he's on the sunny coast. And it was an email about his cap raise. And it was at number one, first of all, epic outreach. I don't know. He referenced the podcast. So I assume he's heard, he's seen the interest. He's somehow probably manufactured for this ad to be seen by us, gets us to sign up. I'm clearly using it. And then he follows up with the investment email pitch. And the email was on point. Here's my data. Here's my traction. Here's my go-to-market. We're going UK, US, like had actual relevance to what we are doing. And I don't want to share his data, but there's a number of things stood out. One was from first line of code to first dollars in the bank was 30 days. And so just as a little dot point in his email, demonstrating traction, demonstrating capability, building trust, building respect. It was like, yeah, this is solid. So Jack, I shot you an email this morning. We're going to set up a call.
But yeah, that's why I think like when people say outbound's dead, it's not dead if you have value and you can craft an email that isn't even to a ridiculous standard. It's just a succinct email that gets to the point, doesn't waste our time and isn't slop.
It's about there's an element to like things being human now as well. Like people want to know that a human wrote this and they just didn't chuck it in GPT and they didn't put any thought into it. So I think like that's also an element that people now underestimate. And it's that, but it's also, I think, the craft of writing a good email is no longer front of mind for people. And so because it's so quick and easy to leverage an AI tool to write something, they're not actually thinking about the structure of a good email. How do I ensure that they understand what I'm looking for? What are the outcomes? So I think like there's this human element and this actually putting yourself in the reader's shoes that I think a lot of people are missing right now.
This is spot on. And the other thing I loved about this one, it wasn't like listen to the podcast and then send me an email. It was actually a scalable approach, digital ads, targeting, and testing. Did I actually sign up without any other point of reference? So I think it's a lesson for founders, like building a scalable sales engine. How are you testing your channels? How are you actually testing real conviction of the buy side rather than just a purely relationship-based? Because if you can build that scalable sales engine rather than being relationship-based, you'll be able to grow faster. So I love the approach that this founder has taken.
Yeah, and one of the conversations we had with a founder yesterday, because towards the end of the trip, we open up office hours, so we're getting good one-on-one time with them, and they just asked for some feedback, and it was like, you are clearly good at scoring ones. You've got this customer, you went and had a chat to them, you found them, and now you found this customer, and you're going, but that's not scale. You might be able to build a great little business, but you don't seem to be putting any attention and any creativity to how am I going to have some energy towards some of that scalable stuff. And the people that are thinking scale first. Now, you do have to do things that don't scale to begin with, but you just don't want to get stuck there for the rest of your life. And it's easy to get stuck. Speaking of AI sales, there was a post during the week from Jason Lemkin that said, within a year, AI sales reps will join every call. 95% of I don't knows or I'll get back to you. Within a year, you'll just have your AI BDR there and they'll just answer the questions. And then 98% of those within another year will probably goodbye salesperson. Like these tools are already starting to come out where you just have it in the background. And the call recording that sits in the background is going to move into being able to provide the salesperson answering the question from a knowledge base, which is going to move into just being able to automate the beginning and the end. It's what Ash is trying to build for the portfolio support. The avatar robot of me will turn up simultaneously to 4 companies. They'll press the green button and then it'll start talking in whatever voice you wanted to talk in. You've left me hanging there. Okay. Everyone's shaking their head. Well, anything else that we want to add before I transition to the next one? One of the other big conversations all through this week is, yes, learn the specifics, but part of what we're trying to make sure that you're able to get your head around is you've got to be able to build a culture and a climate that can traverse this stuff. And we've been giving them some tools and some frameworks and doing all the usual conversations. And last night at dinner, there was a cool little conversation just around conflict and trust and how to build those cultures in companies and relationships. But when I saw this post, it reminded me of a lot of the conversations that we're having here. It was a post by Chris Eagland, who's the CEO and one of the co-founders of Go1. And what he's talking about is a culture of curiosity. The post says, in a world of economic and technological uncertainty where no one understands where it will lead, organizational culture becomes an even stronger competitive advantage. That is a absolutely true statement. When there is constant ambiguity, the ability to rethink traditional approaches at speed with constant experimentation will win. And he then puts a chart up talking about what does a culture of curiosity look like there. And he talks about Go1 getters who explore fearlessly, who operate with velocity and pragmatism and are driven to win together. And I think that is absolutely the right way to think about it. And then just add a couple of ideas. What often happens with fast-moving teams is some things can creep up in the background, and it's hard to be curious about something if every time you raise it, or when things aren't going all that well, your curiosity leads to you getting a cricket bat over the head. And for especially some of the larger organizations and then some of the smaller organizations where there's a lot of conflict, that can get them into trouble. And so if you want to maintain a culture of curiosity, one idea, and there's many different recipes, I'm just saying one idea, is to make sure that you use the calendar as a blunt instrument to constantly just be getting together outside of the office where you just accumulate what are the issues, what are the challenges, what do we need to solve? And everybody gets an opportunity to just write that down in silence. Don't just turn up into the meeting and just start talking. Everybody writes down in silence. And then you type them up or write them up one at a time. So nobody gets to dominate, nobody talks over. And the whole idea is just to accumulate. Now, if you start to do this every quarter, and for some companies, you got to do it every month, have we improved from last month? Have we improved from last quarter? Are we on the right track? What do we need to prioritize? How do we need to go about doing these things? But too often, there's not like a systemic approach to driving curiosity, and it's left a little bit organic. And if you can sort of say, actually, even if things are going good, we get together once a quarter, we write down what the issues are, we write down what our challenges are, we get them up there, we then start to prioritize them, we then create, working groups to try and get this moving. You're more likely to have an environment that can really foster curiosity around problems because you're picking them up before they become crises. And often what happens with founders is that they're in this reactive mode where they just didn't find a way to be proactive when problems were little. And then they only ever get to the problems when they're crises. And that generally means a lot more conflict, a lot more challenges. So anyway, just a thought, but I really liked Chris's post.
Was there any crossover between that and some of the insights that Grace had? Obviously, like failure and experimentation is a massive culture thing. And I would think if you have a culture that can talk about, just little pain points, let alone experimentation and failure, then I think psychological safety is obviously something that sits across all of them. Be keen to hear if there are any insights from that.
Grace was more talking about, I think, at a high level and the need for it. And it was only a short session, really didn't describe her role is to foster that environment and make sure people feel comfortable with that. And it's great that organizations like that get to a point where they can afford that kind of role. The rest of us can't, but we probably didn't have enough time to get into the systemic. My view is just making sure that you have a systemic approach to take the ideas that people like Grace are very good at communicating and then just help them turn them into the how.
Yeah, the way I describe it, Grace's session was very much a culture of curiosity and experimentation for opportunity realization, whereas we probably didn't chat to her as much as the other part of her title on the failure side. And I think this bit here for me is really that culture of curiosity as a prevention of conflict. That's the beauty of this. If it's a muscle memory, it actually achieves both. There's different frameworks for each side. But yeah, the conversation with Grace was very much, and we didn't even share, Don, like some of the things they're doing with AI around their podcasts and the thumbnail generation and the podcast generation. Like that's a whole other thing we could chat about in a future episode. We really should actually get her on for an episode as well.
Yeah, with our humble little podcast, there were definitely some ideas there of what we've got to do better. And given we don't fly out till 9 o'clock tomorrow night, after that breakfast, my plan is, one, we've got to work through some of our internal plans, but two, just get ready for a torrent of content and thumbnails, leveraging the work you've already done, Ash, getting some nice templates. I'm just being a little bit behind, that's all. Well, a bit of more industry news, I guess you would call it. There's been formally the launch of Glitch Capital, ANZ's first founders fund. Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's the managing partner, posted, "We founded Glitch because we recognize that building a company is hard, chaotic, and lonely. Our team has been here and knows how difficult it is to find partners that have been through their shoes. Our team includes founders behind some of Australia's great tech companies and significant exits, including Lee Jasper, Rob Philpott, Paul Perrott, Sam Kroonenberg, and Jeff Tarrant. We've raised 50 million in under 6 months with over 15 unicorn founders and 50 operators as our LP. We will invest between 1 to 3 million into companies." I think that's a great fund that's launched for the ecosystem. We heard about it a couple of months ago from one of our founders and been looking forward to the announcement.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love this. I like their model. I like their language and framing of how they're pitching it. And it's great to see them in the market.
Ash, Jack, you've been very quiet this episode. Ash, I'm going to force you to make a comment.
I have nothing.
Ash has become the new
There's
Jack.
no comment except
The tables are turned. The tables are turned.
I'm like, I would like all of the capital in our fund.
That's
I just have
probably
jealousy.
not
Hence the-
the comment that we're seeking.
Yeah. Sorry, now you have to do more editing.
I'm going to do more editing. Thank you, Ash.
Which is what you get for forcing me to talk.
The more of these funds that can come out to broaden the ecosystem, our role is just to try and be a good participant, try and demonstrate our value and demonstrate why we are good to be part of cap raises for companies in our thesis. So it's not on the agenda because I'd forgotten, but just quickly, any themes of the week? We've been away, leaving you two alone, but anything that's been sort of really top of mind theme-wise?
Jack and I have been in get shit done mode. I feel like we pumped out a bunch of work this week. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where the week went. Like, I swear
Yeah.
it's Sunday and now it's Friday. It's like, what?
For us, it's a time dilation. It feels like we've been here a month because you know what these missions are like. It's just intense. My theme of the week is Aussie culture. And it's that reminder. There's been a lot of talk this week from the Aussie founders about how you have to adjust how you communicate here. And we talk about it all the time. But it is really obvious when you hear someone speaking like an Australian, where they give all the, like they're asked a simple question, how much are you raising? Then there's like 5 minutes of reasoning of why they've come up with this number to then eventually say the number versus just 500K. And then if I want that justified, I'll ask for the follow-up. But I'm really conscious of how Aussies communicate. That's been my theme of the week. It's very noticeable.
Yeah, I've frustrated a couple of the founders when we're doing one-liners and some of the marketing messaging. It's like, whoa. No. Like, you are just gilding this lily. You can say everything you've just said over the last minute in 4 words. Just stop it. You will have time later to demonstrate your intellectual prowess. It's not now.
No, it's been valuable.
Well, I've added a new one. Like, I called it
Sentimental corner.
I call
Does
it-
this need a jingle?
call it sentimental corner, but actually this is not, I don't know why I've put this in here because it's more a word of the day, but
The word of the day is multifunctional. A person who is doing way too fucking much and hanging on by a fucking thread. Multifunctional.
multifunctional. It's a bit like these missions.
None of that came through to me.
It didn't come through. I just had to watch it separately.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the heads up.
No, just your internet was glitchy, but I assume it'll be in your recording.
You guys are multifunctional. All right. Let's get into some charts. There's the Pentagon Pizza Report that is on Twitter, and it tracks the live busyness of pizza places around the Pentagon. And I did a little bit of research. When major geopolitical shit happens, I don't know, like Israel deciding to bomb Iran and Iran sending missiles back and Trump telling people to get out of the Middle East. This account reckons it can forecast shit's going down globally based on the number of people that are getting pizza around the Pentagon. So for those at home, every one of these pizza places all spiked significantly like an hour before Israel launched the missiles.
So you can get some shorts in an hour before, but you've got no context of what's about to happen.
You don't know what's happening. There's just some shit that the Pentagon's dealing with. So for those at home, this is a chart that shows the S&P going back to 2000 and then the buybacks by quarterly. Now, we've obviously had another big spike up in the S&P 500, but just note the lower high in stock buybacks since the last peak in 21. And so what can sometimes happen with a few indicators, and this isn't perfect, right? But it's just that clearly in this particular little pullback, they're not buying as much as previous pullbacks. So anyway, just a little random thing. And then this is a chart of the Wilshire 5,000 to GDP ratio. This is Warren Buffett's favorite. Is the market expensive or not? And we're about to exceed it for the highest ratio again in history. This came from our cloud computing session, The Road to Useful Quantum. He did a really great job of visually plotting for us. Where is quantum today from an error rate point of view and the number of qubits? And then where are we heading over time towards useful error-corrected quantum computing? And a bit like Moore's law has very much demonstrated the way AI is going. We just seem to be on the cusp of near-term applications, which is probably why the likes of governments are putting $1 billion into things like PsiQuantum and whatever else, because we're sort of at that dawn of some pretty cool stuff happening. And if you think of what's going to happen for health and the ability to deal with a lot of things, quantum is at the center of that. It was interesting that he did have a view that blockchain is in trouble when quantum develops to a certain level.
Don, on this one, I think we should have a reminder for a future episode to chat about the quantum investment from the government, because I think that was a good discussion something we could touch on. I did have something on this. Oh, the other part of this as well is just, I didn't realize the application layer, like how many companies are actually using quantum computers. It's very much in experimental mode, but the likes of JP Morgan, Airbus, big companies that already have quantum computing applications.
Yeah. All right, I'm mindful of time. I'll skip the OnlyFans one. So this is Waymo trips in California. Like, it just continues to go up and to the right. We are getting all of this globally soon. So for people, like, it's gone from 100,000 in last year in 2024 to 700,000 just in California. And that's just going to continue to leap significantly. This is a chart of the average price of a used Tesla from July 22nd. Now, remember our John Hempton saying, a commodity product subject to competition, the marginal profit always goes to zero. And for those at home, your average used car price has been like 31,000 July 22, and it's dropped to about 27, whereas Teslas have gone from 67 down to 28. Now, because we're in the music industry, and Ed at dinner to begin was like, I'm never going to listen to your AI song because I want it from a human and whatever. So I sent him the R&B version and the country version, and he came back and said, this is actually amazing. So I'm going to continue to produce. I think I might actually make a song about Ed, now that I think about it. Like, total breach of any form of privacy and a step too far in the relationship, but and not weird at all. But pop songs are getting shorter. So this chart goes back to 1958. And it just shows that from 1958 to 1990, the average length of a song went from like 2 and a bit minutes up to 4 minutes. There were some outliers, like the Beatles' "Hey Jude" at 7 minutes in 1969 is an outlier. I once got kicked out of a karaoke bar in Japan for screeching "Hey Jude," so there's a little piece of info. But it's been dropping since.
Screeching.
Yeah, it was that screaming bit.
Oh, that's so good done.
Yeah, they first turned their back on it, and then they asked us to leave, very politely, being Japanese culture. But yeah, you can just see that the average length of a song is getting shorter, and I just wonder if that's to do with the attention span of humans. This is actually some MRIs. That is, 2 new studies showed 2 hours of mindless scrolling daily reduces grey matter in key brain areas. So these are some MRIs that are starting to demonstrate that actually a lot of this stuff can make you fucking dumber and get brain rot, which I don't think is unexpected. But a lot of the conversation's been about robotics, and I am so clear that so many humans are going to opt out of traditional relationships. But I saw this post and laughed. It was like, in 30 years, I'll probably be up to some boomer stuff like, no son of mine's going to marry an LLM. Marriage is between 2 humans only. And my kids will be like, oh my God, Dad, you're so robophobic. And finally, 6 months from now, this is on a wall, 6 months from now, you will either have 6 months of excuses or 6 months of progress. And as someone that's about to get the second number in the ESVCP partnership, which is about to make us legal to launch, this is going to be us.
Yep. The only excuse will be us.
All right, we've got some people downstairs, and I've got to put on some pants and head down.
I have nothing. But we're kicking off in our last full day in London.
I'm looking forward to it.
Enjoy, guys.
We're getting more into some go-to-market, doing some like LinkedIn automation stuff, and just really making sure that people have a plan. Because one of the biggest problems after these trips is all of this energy, and they get back to day-to-day life with their day-to-day business, and they're unable to integrate it properly. So trying to set up some accountability rhythms, make sure we follow up with them. It's going to be good.
Love it.
Great.
Awesome, guys.
Thanks, team.
See you.
See ya.